We were anxiously waiting for passengers to show up at the airport baggage claim. My brother-in-law Bob was there with his two daughters, Danica, age 9, and Louise, age 7. With me were my son, David, 12, and my daughter Sheila, 9. The children held a large sign above their heads that read, "Welcome home, mommies." 2 weeks ago, my wife Mandy and her sister Helen went on vacation to the beaches of Belize. It's a very nice way to escape the cold Minnesota winters, especially in January. Finally, the airplane passengers began to appear in the doorway. The children broke into screams when they saw their mothers. Both women were resplendent with their beautiful tans and lovely smiles. Mandy kissed David and Sheila and hugged them tightly. She then turned to me and I was rewarded with a hot kiss. I wrapped my arms around her and let her go with difficulty. "I've missed you so much, honey. Wait until tonight, honey," she whispered in my ear. "I'll show you how much I missed you." And that night she certainly proved it. After 15 years of marriage, she knows a few things about me. One of the things she knows is how much I find tan lines arousing. After the kids went to bed, we went straight to the bedroom. "Honey, get in bed and be ready to meet me when I come out of the bathroom." In no time at all, I found myself waiting in bed. A few minutes later, Mandy emerged from the bathroom wearing a bikini thong. Mandy's most attractive asset was always her very pretty face, a face made for smiling. Everywhere she went, she had the most beautiful face. However, she herself was her own worst critic of her body. She felt she was too short, too skinny, not big enough breasts, too thick at the hips. A side effect of the 2 pregnancies was that her breasts got bigger and lusher, and the bikini thongs definitely showed off her beautiful curves. But the best part was ahead. Mandy stood at the foot of the bed, showing off her beautiful golden tan acquired at the beach. She slowly pulled down her thong first, exposing a white patch of skin in the front. Where the straps of the thong were, faint lines of tan could be seen. Next, we spent a good part of the night getting reacquainted with each other. A few days later, Mandy was cleaning the bathtub. Well, I was in the hallway enjoying the beautiful view of her moving ass. Mandy sensed my presence and looked over my shoulder. "And what are you doing standing there?" "Looking at your ass and wondering what I could do if you weren't wearing pants and if the kids were already in bed," I answered honestly. "Pervert," she giggled. "Teasing." She stood up and walked over to me. She took off her plastic gloves, threw them over her shoulder right into the sink, and walked over to me, swiveling her hips, teasing me. She pressed herself against me with her whole body. "That's how you can tease," she said. Normally, I would have pressed my hips in to increase contact, but I couldn't. A few seconds earlier, a feeling of dread had come over me. I didn't know why, but there was definitely something wrong with the picture in front of me. But for the life of me, I didn't know what it was. Mandy was tired of me not responding to teasing. "Like all men, just words and no action," she said, thrusting her hips one last time. She turned and grabbed her gloves from the sink. "I'd better finish the bathroom." It was then that I realized what little detail had struck my subconscious. I turned pale, turned, and walked away. "I'm going to the garage," I muttered, not caring if Mandy heard me or not. In the garage, I sat at the workbench, immersed in my thoughts. I had a bad feeling about what I had just discovered. Was Mandy cheating on me while she was in Belize? I'm sure of one thing. If Mandy had tried even a little, she would have had no problem finding a man willing to sleep with her. And what I saw only made sense if that's what she tried while on vacation with her sister. What would I do when I found out she'd cheated on me? The answer was obvious. I would leave her without a second thought. It would hurt. Well, it already hurt. But it's worse because of our 2 kids. Why did she do this to me, to us? Am I such a bad husband? These questions ran through my head for the rest of the evening. But while I had a very strong feeling that she had cheated on me, I had absolutely no proof that she had. So how could I find out for sure? The cheating, if it happened 3,000 miles away in another country. I can't confront her because she'll just deny it. Would I be able to confront her sister? I toyed with the idea for a while, but the 2 sisters were always equally stubborn. All my life I'd known sisters. If one cheated, so did the other. I had to talk to Bob about my suspicions. A while later, I heard Mandy calling for me, so I came home. "What have you been doing in the garage all this time?" Mandy asked. Over 2 hours. You're gonna catch a cold. Oh, just tidying up a bit, I said simply. And then a thought occurred to me. I didn't want to sleep with her. Anyway, I already had a cold. It hit me this morning. I think I'll sleep on the couch for a few days. I could see Mandy didn't like that very much. Okay, I'll make you some herbal tea before you go to bed. Chamomile should help, she said. After Mandy went to bed, I was left alone with my thoughts. My mind jumped haphazardly from one idea to another. Why did she do this? What could I do about it? Should I talk to Bob to find out if Helen was cheating? At some point, I realized there was a sure way to find out if Mandy was cheating. She is addicted to keeping in touch with all her friends and acquaintances. On Facebook, Mandy has at least 600 or 700 friends. There are even more in her Yahoo address book. If she has contacted someone in Belize, I'm sure she has exchanged information via email so they can keep in touch. However, I don't know if she would use her current email account since we know each other's passwords. I finally fell asleep as the plan began to take shape. The next day, I was very tired and had a hard time concentrating on work. I made an appointment with a divorce attorney for the next day, Friday, then called Bob and asked him to meet me for lunch. He was surprised but agreed. I told him about my discovery. At first, he laughed at me, but I soon convinced him that it was serious. He would try to find out if Helen had cheated on him. Claiming a severe case of the flu, I left the office early and got home at 3 p.m. Immediately, I installed a keyboard tracking program on our home computer. It was a week before I could find out the truth. Mandy had logged into another email account using the username BeachDreams1975. Her password consisted of our children's names and ages, Shadav 912. Just a few days after returning from Belize, she was communicating daily with Brad. The emails were prohibitive with both Mandy and Helen. Helen also hooked up with a guy named Steve. I forwarded all the emails sent and received by Mandy to myself and then erased all traces of my surveillance. Then, from my email account, I sent Bob some emails. I found out that they had been having sex almost from day one in Belize, and they had even switched partners a few times. They were already talking about meeting again next month in Chicago. The girls would pretend to go shopping, and the two assholes, longtime friends, would pretend to go watch the Chicago Blackhawks. A quick search on Mandy's Facebook page and Helen's page found two recent friends, Brad Simmons and Steve Reiner, both from Illinois. Both are married. I have you in my hands, assholes. I had a difficult task ahead of me. Bob denied that Helen and Mandy were cheating. He kept my suspicions secret, but never truly believed that his loving wife would cheat on him. I understood his position. Looking at Mandy's behavior with me and the children, it was hard to believe she was going to end the marriage. She seemed so loving and caring that I sometimes believed myself to be wrong. It definitely helped, as I had to resume regular sex. I called Bob at work. Hi, Bob. It's Jack, I said. Can you log into your personal email account from work? Sure. Did you send me something? Yes. Read all the emails and call me back. I waited half an hour for his call. Fucking bitch! Bob yelled over the phone. I'm gonna kick that ass to the curb tonight. Fucking bitch! I love that woman. I'd do anything for her. Calm down, Bob, I told him. I have a plan and I need your help. We can't let them find out what we know. I can't. I just can't. I have a need to hurt her badly, Bob said. We will, Bob. We will. I can promise you that. But in the meantime, pull yourself together. Call home and leave a message saying you're working late tonight. We'll meet at the Old Town Pub and I'll tell you my plans. Later that night, Bob and I held our first war council. Bob, what can hurt our wives? Besides a kick in the ass? Other than any form of abuse, I said. Bob didn't answer my question. Shame. I want to shame them in front of their loved ones. You know our father-in-law Tom is crazy about his two girls, I told Bob. Bob agreed. That's a well-known fact. But you also know what he hates more than anything else in life, even more than the IRS. An understanding smile appeared on Bob's face. Cheating wives, Bob said. Tom's ex-wife, Mandy and Helen's mother, had cheated on him throughout their marriage, as he later learned. After the divorce, she got custody of the two girls, the house, generous alimony and child support, and most of his company. He had to borrow a lot of money to buy her share of the business. It took years to get his company back on solid financial footing. Now he sold the business and lived well, but alone. He visited his daughters and grandchildren often. I explained my plan. We only had 2 weeks to act like loving husbands. "Do as I do, Bob," I explained. "Get a few colds and work a lot of late nights. You'll be too sick or too tired to perform in bed." Sure enough, I got back very late that night. Mandy was already in bed, and I was just faking a terrible headache. I contemplated my revenge plan for a while, but soon fell asleep. I was already aware of the upcoming sex fest when Mandy announced to me that she and Helen had planned a shopping trip to Chicago. I told her that was a great idea. She expected to stay at a hotel downtown. To show my love and support, I even made the reservation myself, using our joint credit card. The room was reserved for Mr. and Miss Johnston, double occupancy, since Helen and Mandy were to share a room. The girls were beyond excited. Bob also offered to pay for the room. This room was reserved for Mr. and Miss DeRocher, double occupancy, since Helen and Mandy were to share the room. Bob and I arranged it so that each of them thought we were renting one room each. Although we knew that the girls were not going to share a room, for them, we had no idea that their lovers would be there. The girls planned to take Friday off, fly to Chicago in the morning, and return on a late flight out of Chicago on Sunday. The following week, I talked to Tom Raines, Mandy's dad. I told him I wanted to surprise the two girls by bringing the kids and himself to Chicago for a family reunion, since the trip was just 2 weeks after our 15th wedding anniversary. Tom thought it was a great idea. I asked Tom if he could book 3 rooms. He thought it would be a great surprise. Bob and I were outraged at the behavior of the wives that morning when we dropped them off at the airport. They acted like 2 schoolgirls heading out on a first date. Laughing at nothing and everything, they were brimming with nervous energy. At the security gate, we kissed them on the cheek. They didn't even notice that neither Bob nor I had told them, "I love you." Bob drove us back into town. I picked up my cell phone and made a quick call. "Hi, it's Johnston," I said to the private investigator I had hired. "They're about to land in Chicago. Is everything in place?" "Yes," Alan White answered. "They'll be in your rooms 201 and 203, and everything is already set up for both audio and video. I'll have everything set up when you land tomorrow." The next morning, we all met at the airport. During the flight, Tom switched seats with my son David and sat next to me. "Listen, son, don't think I'm just a silly old geezer," he told me. "You and Bob look like you're going to a funeral. You two are up to something. What's the problem?" "I'm sorry I kept you in the dark, Tom," I replied. "I know you love your daughters more than anything in the world. I'm afraid to say I have some very bad news for you." "They're cheating on you guys, aren't they?" he asked point blank. "Yes," I replied. "They slept with 2 guys they met and slept with during the 2 weeks they traveled to Belize. I have a private investigator gathering all the evidence we'll need for the divorce, and we'll file it as soon as we catch them in bed with their lovers." Tom put his hand on my shoulder in a fatherly way. "I'm so sorry, son. I know how much it hurts. I wish the few years they lived with me had been enough to make some sense in their heads, but I'm afraid their mother's upbringing during most of their teenage years has been a permanent bad influence on them." Tom cried. "I didn't know I could suffer so much again," he said quietly. Coming to his senses, he stood up and returned to his seat. Alan White met us at the Chicago airport. He came to me with 2 envelopes, one for Bob and one for me. They contained a set of compromising photographs as well as a DVD of the previous night's events. He informed us that the process server would be contacting us shortly and that his operative was watching the 2 bedrooms. His assistant would inform us of the most compromising and embarrassing moment to break in on the lovers. Simmons and Rayner's wives will receive similar packages by mid-afternoon. Bob and I asked Tom and Alan to watch the kids for a while. We needed to see how bad it was. My heart dropped when I saw Mandy in every conceivable sexual position. As far as we could see, they'd had unprotected sex. Bob and I would have to get tested for STDs in Minneapolis. Alan White then called his assistant to see if our way to the hotel was clear for us. The lovers had gone out to lunch, so that was fine. Tom had booked 3 rooms. Bob and I asked for an extra key card for rooms 201 and 203, registered in our names. Both key cards were issued after the clerk checked our IDs. We told the desk clerk that our kids had a surprise planned, so he didn't alert our wives. We all went up to the 3rd floor where our rooms were located. After an hour of waiting, Alan White called. They had returned from lunch and were in their rooms. They had switched partners. Mandy is with Rayner now, and Helen is with Simmons, he said. I'm in the lobby, and the processing server just showed up. I'll send him to your room. I turned off my phone and got out of bed. It's time to go, guys, I said cheerfully to the kids. And you don't forget what I told you, Sheila, and you too, David. Grandpa and I will enter the room first, and when I give you the signal, you yell, "Surprise, Mommy!" Got it? No problem, Dad, David said. And under no circumstances enter the room until I tell you to. Yeah, that's right. We got it, Dad. Let's go. We walked up the stairs and stopped in front of room 201. I inserted the key and quietly opened the door. Tom and I stepped inside, the 2 kids following us. They didn't wait, however. As soon as the door opened, they shouted, "Surprise, Mommy! We're here!" Mandy was lying on the bed on all 4 of them. Our appearance was truly a surprise. Rayner rushed to his pants lying on the floor, quickly put them on, grabbed the rest of his clothes, and sprinted out of the room. Well, at least he reacted quickly. Mandy jumped off the bed and tried to gather her clothes. No, 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 this can't be happening. No, what are you doing here? She exclaimed. Hey, Mommy's naked, squeaked Sheila, who squeezed herself between Tom and me. I snapped my finger. A process server walks into the room. Mandy Johnston? He asked the only naked woman. This is my mom, Sheila said, trying to be helpful. The process server handed her an envelope. You've been served, he said, and took a picture of Mandy holding the envelope, trying to hide her breasts. He stepped out. Come on, kids. Let's leave Mom while she gets dressed. We walked out of the room. Mandy was crying on the floor. She knew all too well what was in the envelope. Bob and his kids were in the hallway. Bob, I said, this is your show now. Things didn't go so well with Helen. Simmons was an aggressive type. When he was torn away from Helen, he got very angry with the uninvited guests. He punched Tom in the face. Bob didn't need any more incentive to express his frustration, and the first thing Simmons felt was Bob punching him and Helen scrunching up his face in defense of her father. It was one decent gesture on her part to defend her old man. I walked into the room, grabbed Simmons and threw him into the bathroom, away from the eyes of the kids, throwing his clothes after him. Get dressed and get out of here, asshole, I said. Tom, Bob, and the kids left the room. Without any shame, Helen followed them, covered only by the bedspread. Her father turned to her with a stern face. Go back to your room and get dressed. Like the little girl she was at heart, she turned and went into the bedroom. The process server had disappeared during the argument, but now stood in the doorway. Helene Durocher? Yes! He held out an envelope to her. You have been served. We all went back upstairs. The original plan was to spend the night there and talk to our wives one last time, but I wasn't in the mood to be in the same room as Mandy. I grabbed our luggage and told the kids we were going home. Tom told us he wanted to stay. He had a lot to tell his daughters. Bob and his kids came back to Minneapolis with us. 4 months later, despite Mandy's many requests for forgiveness, a judge heard our case and ordered an uncontested divorce. It took Tom a lot of effort to convince Mandy to sign the divorce papers. The house was mine, as I had inherited it from my parents before I even met Mandy. I also got primary custody of the kids, but I didn't ask for any money from Mandy. Tom made sure they were well taken care of. Our other assets were divided equally, and I received a generous gift from Tom the following Christmas to get back on my feet financially. As he explained to me, it was from Mandy's future inheritance money anyway. Bob's divorce went about the same way, except that their house was jointly owned. However, shortly after the divorce, Bob and Helen started dating again, and I'm pretty sure they will eventually get back together. Too bad. As for Mandy and I, there's no chance I'll ever take her back. I kind of believed her when she said she was very sorry for what she did. I also believe that she still loves me. My problem is that her betrayal completely trampled my love for her and left all my love in the dust of her betrayal on the beaches of Belize. I couldn't love her anymore. For the sake of the children, we are very polite to each other, but that is all I will ever do. One day, when she was waiting for the kids to get ready to go with her, she asked me, "I'm curious, Jack. How did you even know about that stupid thing I did in Belize?" "It's my love of tan lines," I replied. "I don't get it. I wore bikinis all the time. We never went to a nude beach or anything like that." "Think about it, Mandy. What did you do every time you scrubbed the bathroom with all the chemicals you needed?" "Gathered everything I needed, put on plastic gloves, and rolled up my sleeves," she said. "You forgot the one thing you always did first," I said. "You took off your rings, your wedding band and engagement ring. You didn't have a tan line on your finger."